Look, I'm not going to say that face mask should have been called because it absolutely should have been called. But let's put things in perspective here, people. Number one, the Bengals were up 21-7. You got a 2-touchdown lead. You're dominating the football game. If you handle business and finish the job, you're not in that situation to begin with. Let's be clear. Number two, the Bengals failed to execute on that play. And number three, the Ravens had more penalties. What was it, 11 penalties for damn near 90 yards versus the Bengals' 3 penalties? The Ravens were fighting with the officials more in that game than the Bengals were. Now, I don't want to hear about, if that's Patrick Mahomes that gets called. I don't want to hear about this or that or the third. There have been plenty of penalties that the Kansas City Chiefs have been called with over the years that were BS. The officiating is officiating. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad. And I'm not saying that the overtime rules didn't have anything with their decision to go for 2. But let's keep it a buck. You're clearly not trusting your defense to finish the job in overtime, which I've talked about this 101 times over. The coin toss has little to do with how you win or lose in overtime. Folks, it's the NFL. This isn't college football. Hell, this isn't even high school football. It's professional football. It's supposed to be harder to win. That's whether anybody likes it or not. Well, how come the rules are so different for the regular season than it is for the playoffs? Look, I think the playoff rules are way too complicated, and I think the Super Bowl rules are way too complicated. I personally like the idea of going back to the original rules for the NFL, and that is the first score wins the game. It's ridiculous to think, well, if you get a touchdown, you win, but if you get a field goal, you don't, and the other team gets a chance. A score is a score in overtime. That's all there is to it. Now, I would be in favor of making overtime 10 minutes instead of 15 minutes, but outside of that, the first score should win, whether it's the regular season, whether it's the playoffs. Defensively, your job is to make the stop. But honestly, the reason why they went for 2 there, if you ask me, it's just to hell with it. We're here. We had this lead. The Ravens have come back on us. Defensively, I don't know if I trust overtime or not. I'm just going to go ahead and take the shot and win it all now. What have you got to lose? The team isn't playing well. I mean, look, I'm just going to keep it a buck. I feel bad for Joe Burrow. And I've been saying this for a couple of years now. He's in a no-win situation in Cincinnati. But I think he feels a loyalty to that state, even though the university, the Ohio State, did him dirty. I still think he feels a sense of loyalty to the Bengals. But we see this with Cincinnati every year, and I've talked about it over the last couple of seasons, where they start off slow, but then they end up surging in the second part of the season. But how long can you live like that? This game was definitive in terms of Zach Taylor as a head football coach. Let's not forget, when he was at Texas Tech, he didn't do anything, and he had Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield as his quarterbacks. His ineptitude in these types of games continuously reveal themselves. There's no offensive line. The defense is hit and miss. You don't have a running game now. It's literally Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase against everybody. And if it's not working for you, what do you have to rely on? Who do you have to rely on? You don't have a coach that can out-game plan or out-coach anybody in the NFL right now. That's just the reality of the situation in Cincinnati. Yes, it should have been called. Yes, the Bengals should have been given a second chance. But if they were up to the task to begin with, that situation doesn't even occur. I'm not saying that officials should be able to make or break a game of football, but again, the Ravens, more penalties and more yards than Cincinnati in that football game. There's no conspiracy against the Bengals. It was a missed call. It was horrifically missed. It should have been made, but they shouldn't have been there to begin with, and that's all there is to it. All right, so the Heisman Trophy race, Cam Ward apparently is now the favorite with the Miami Hurricanes to win the Heisman. And look, I've said this a couple of times throughout the course of this season, and I'm going to reiterate it right here, and that is Jeanty over at Boise State could run for 10,000 yards. He could have 750 touchdowns, and they'd still figure out a way to give it to a quarterback. To me, it's obvious. The two front runners should be Jeanty and Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is playing the two-way game. We haven't seen that in how many years? I mean, I think the last true player to do that really was Charles Woodson. You know, in the 80s and 90s, 70s, 60s, it really wasn't kind of like a bad thing, but it started to switch, right? It was something that became less and less common, but it was something that we still saw. We saw it with Primetime. We saw it with Charles Woodson. Cordell Stewart, remember they called him Slash? Before he was actually a quarterback with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he was playing wide receiver, he was playing offense, he was playing defense. I mean, they literally had him doing a little bit of everything because he was just such a phenomenal athlete that you could literally put him anywhere on the field and he could make a difference. So the anomaly now, because it's a rarity now, puts Travis Hunter in a different category. And it doesn't just put him in a category because he does it. It puts him in a category because he's phenomenal at it. Teams have to really game plan their entire offensive and defensive strategies around him. Now, me personally, I still think that Colorado should have him on one side of the field predominantly and then on the other side of the field for a minimal amount of time. Me personally, I've said that I would keep him on defense and then every once in a while put him on offense because I think Shedeur is good enough that he can make plays and he can get the ball to just about anybody in any situation. Plus, he's got really good patience back there in the pocket, sometimes too much patience. And the run game has started to pick up, so you take some of that pressure off of the other receivers. Now, obviously, it's a no-win situation, right? Because offensively, when you have Travis Hunter there, he's going to eat up a lot of coverage. So the coverage is going to change without him in the ball game. But I think defensively, because they're really not that good, when you have him literally taking up an entire half of the football field, I would just rather risk not giving up the points versus trying to outscore everybody. It is what it is. The point of what I'm saying is Travis Hunter is a phenom. He understands the game of football. He's not just a phenomenal athlete. He's smart. He understands strategy. It's clear that he is watching a lot of film and that he's knee-deep in the playbook. That's a leadership intangible that you can't coach. Then you got Jeanty at Boise State. Folks, his season is comparable to Barry Sanders. Okay, let's not forget that Barry did it in only 11 games in the regular season, but Jeanty has sat out multiple halves and still put up the type of numbers that he has. It's got to be frustrating. And, Jeanty has been very diplomatic, much more so than Travis Hunter. I don't mind to brag. I think you should let everybody else speak for you, but it is what it is. But regardless, the point of what I'm saying is I think that Jeanty has been so diplomatic throughout this process that to me it's made people like him even more. I think it's frustrated people even more because they're looking up. If you just look at the statistics alone, regardless of what he does for the team, right? And what is the definition of a Heisman Trophy candidate? It's the player that affects the team the most. So in other words, the question that we have to ask is, if Jeanty is not on Boise State's football roster, then are they still an only one-loss football team as of the moment right now, and we're still talking about them potentially being in the college football playoff? I think it's a resounding no. Same thing with Travis Hunter. If Travis Hunter is at Alabama instead of Colorado, where is Colorado right now? Potentially, where's Alabama right now, especially with what they got going on with Ryan Williams? You line those two up on the offensive side of the football, it is a no-win situation for any defense, and Alabama's probably undefeated right now, despite the fact that Kalen DeBoer has clearly proven that he has clear ineptitudes as a head football coach. Then you have to look at Shedeur Sanders. You got to look at Shedeur and go, okay, offensively, even though they've got Travis Hunter, are they still going to be as good? Because somebody's got to get him the ball, and the ball placement from Travis or from Shedeur is phenomenal. So to be honest with you, I would still have Shedeur ahead of Cam Ward. Now look, Cam to me is the most improved quarterback in all of college football. And he has found a place where he has settled in very well into. But, and I do mean but, the turnovers continue to be a problem for him. In Miami, as a result, is consistently playing from behind. Now, it's been the same problem with Colorado, but I think they're playing from behind for a number of other reasons. So to me, the top two candidates are Jeanty and Travis Hunter, because without them, those two affect their team the absolute most. And Shedeur, he doesn't turn the football over nearly as much. Yeah, I think last season, what did he have? Only 3 interceptions the whole damn year. But he does get his team from behind when he holds on to the football too long, doesn't see the defense the way that he should. He has been better with scrambling, getting upfield, creating yards. That's been a big part of why they've been winning football games. Obviously, they've got Texas Tech coming up tomorrow, so we'll see how that all plays out. But I still would have Hunter, Jeanty, Shedeur, not necessarily in that order. Then I would have Cam Ward, though. Regardless, he's going to be fourth to me. And even then, you got Dillon Gabriel, what's going on in Oregon right now. I think there's just other players, but the problem with the Heisman is it continues to be a quarterback award. And it's pissing me off. It's been pissing me off. There are other players on football teams that can have just as big of an impact, if not more so, on their football team. And I get it. For years, it was basically a running back award. Then it shifted. We need to be looking at the best player on each team and asking ourselves the very simple question: if said individual is not there, how good is that football team really? That was my entire argument for Jane Daniels last season when he won the Heisman. I talked about him at the beginning of the year. If he had an offensive line and there were some other things that were improved on that football team, they were going to be talking about them for a national championship. He was literally carrying that football team. I said he was better than Caleb Williams 2 seasons ago, reiterated it last year, and I still stand by it right now. And if you want it, I got the receipts. That's all I'm saying. But it was nice because to me, even though he was a quarterback, the point of what I'm saying here is, even though he was a quarterback, we weren't talking about a quarterback getting the Heisman just because his team was undefeated. We were literally talking about the best player in the country for once to me. It wasn't hype. It wasn't fabricated. It wasn't manufactured in the media. It was real because nobody was talking about him at the beginning of the season except for yours truly. Speaking of college football, look, folks, I'm doubling down. They are making this out to be the SEC Big Ten Invitational with a couple of little spruced here and there, right? You've got Miami, clearly they're ranked number 4 right now. But again, the rankings to begin with don't even matter. This is why I keep saying we don't need rankings, because when you look at the polls and you look at if we were to start the college football playoff tomorrow, the ranking system wouldn't even matter. Now, the problem is you've got Alabama in there, and you're ranking a Mizzou football team who is 6-3, and you're doing whatever you can to desperately keep them in. And what did the AD of Michigan talk about? He said, well, the thing is we're talking about good losses here. They did beat Georgia. Ohio State had a close loss against Oregon, and they're the number 1 ranked team. Who ranked them number 1? People. Not a system, but people. And people are a lot of times incorrect because their subjectivity and objectivity can be thrown out by pure bias. And the bias is, well, this is the flavor of the week. And then within the committee, you have the bias of what is going to help out our brand. Where are we going to make the most money? They are not MMA promoters. They are not looking for the big money fight. They are not looking for the best possible matchup. That's a business decision. That is not a football decision. And I don't give a damn about what is supposedly being said about the highest 5 ranked conference champions get in. That's BS. With the addition of 12, you are now going to see all 4 power conference champions get in. That is all there is to it. And we are going to see some people from said power conferences who don't deserve to get in, but will get in over other teams that are outside of the power conference that should be getting in. Now, obviously, Army still got Notre Dame, Boise State, the Mountain West Conference, all that stuff that's going on over there. We'll see what happens. But Navy's already gotten hornswoggled by Notre Dame, who got beat by Northern Illinois at the beginning of the season. That should be considered a horrific loss, and that should make anybody question how good Notre Dame really is. However, there's more than one thing that could be true at a time, right? Just because you have a bad loss or you have a 1 loss or maybe even a 2-loss record, that doesn't make you a bad team. And I have long since hated the idea that you basically have to go undefeated in order to be able to compete for a championship. I hate that notion, especially with the expansion and the continuous expanding of how many games are being played. The NCAA is literally discussing moving the season to a 15-game season. I mean, at this point, it might as well be the NFL with the way that they are demanding more and more. Now, I understand. If you're going to get paid a lot of money and you're going to open up the door for the NIL and all that, then I understand that more is going to be asked of you and you're going to be expected to play more games. I get it. But I think, to me, the best possible case scenario, and I've been saying this for years, is to take it back down to 10 or 11 football games. It's going to make the conference games more crucial. It's going to make your out-of-conference games more crucial because you're not going to have the affordability to lose to a Northern Illinois. And then you go from there and you have a true playoff system in place. These are the rules. This is how you get in, and this is what we do. You've got over 130 teams in Division I college football. You can't tell me that you thought 4 was enough to begin with. In the moment that they left out an undefeated ACC team, folks, that should tell you everything that you need to know about where they want their money to be. Because Disney has now acquired Fox. With that acquisition, ask yourself this: who's got the big contract with Fox? Oh yeah, that's right, the Big Ten. Who's got the big contract with the SEC? Oh yeah, that's right. Well, that doesn't make sense because the ACC's with ESPN2 and okay, fine. Who's got the second most championships and who's got the most in basketball over the last decade plus? So they'll let their money trickle. And by the way, Miami, they know was a big brand. So, of course, they're ranked where they are. But even then, I don't even agree with the rankings that came out to begin with already. These rankings are so biased that it's not even funny. They are desperate to get Alabama in because of the money that they'll make at all costs. It's ridiculous. Why is Mizzou even ranked? You got beat by how many? By plus 30? They're a 3-loss football team. They're ranked to try and make Alabama look as good as possible. That's exactly what that is. They keep saying, well, they're ranked this way, but you're the ones putting them into that position to begin with. That's you. And it insults our intelligence, to be honest with you. It's not a football playoff. It's an invitational. It is through a playoff. How? A playoff is when you've earned a bid systematically through wins. The set of rules that we have in there, and you played by those rules, and it proved why you should be in. Other than that, why do we still vote on this? Well, they vote in boxing, they vote in MMA. Folks, that's because we're not doing 90 rounds anymore. Judges are there in the event of the fight goes the distance. In the event of. And how many times have we all watched fights and gone, the hell were they looking at? It's the same thing in college football. My top 4 teams right now would be number 1, Georgia, even though Carson Beck has got to clean up the turnover problem. My number 1 would still be Georgia as of the moment. My number 2 would be Oregon. My number 3 would be Indiana. And my number 4 would be Miami. After that, it's pretty much a toss-up. I don't know if I'd have Texas at 5, but I'd probably still have them in the top 10. I don't have a problem with them being at 5. And I don't think that because you're undefeated that you should be ranked as high as possible. But I think being undefeated, no matter what, should always be, well, they get a shot. We did what we asked them to do. They went undefeated throughout the regular season. They won their conference championship. They should be in. Now, that's all there is to it. None of this highest ranked out of the how many. Because who's going to put that ranking there? Because I guarantee you what's going to happen is one day they're going to wake up and go, yeah, but here's the problem, though. Their conference isn't that strong. So they're a good football team, and it's cute and all, but we're just going to leave them out. It's going to happen, whether we like it or not. This is still left up to the committee, folks, and it shouldn't be in their hands. They're the ones making the regular season irrelevant, not the college football playoff system in and of itself. They're the ones making it irrelevant because when you leave out an undefeated football team, you have now created a place where the regular season does not matter. That is the responsibility of them, and they failed everybody, whether you want to agree with it or not. I do not give a damn with what happened between Florida State and Georgia. Even Kirby Smart recognized what happened. All those guys that went to the NFL decided not to play in that game. They beat up on the practice squad, who, by the way, threw a middle finger to the NCAA and said, okay, cool, bro. You don't want to let us play for a championship? We'll show you, and threw a middle finger. Why didn't they play? Why didn't they show the world that they deserve to be there? Why am I going to risk my career in the NFL for a meaningless football game? Why am I going to risk myself for a meaningless football game when I can hit the transfer portal next year? Why am I going to risk injury for that? Look at what happened with Florida State this year. We're not talking about this year. We're talking about last season. What happened last season was a travesty, and it's opened the door for what we have now. An Alabama football team with 2 losses, ranked at 11 because of their win over Mizzou, who's 6-3 and got dusted by 30 and has beat nobody that matters. That's all there is to it. It's not a conspiracy. It's reality. You can get my comment section and tell me it's a conspiracy. I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm talking about money. I'm talking about financial gain. I'm talking about power of influence. It's not my fault you don't understand economics, bro. All right. Real quick here. Going to be a pretty good weekend in terms of the schedule for college football. Obviously, I think everybody is going to be looking towards the Colorado Texas Tech game because, believe it or not, even though Texas Tech isn't ranked, that's going to be a pretty big game in terms of Colorado trying to take the Big 12. Obviously, Georgia, Ole Miss, a lot of people are going to be looking at that. Can Lane Kiffin finally win a game that matters? I guess we'll find out. I mean, that game is at Ole Miss. My goodness. I mean, if you can't get it done, you can't get it done. I mean, how much longer do you deal with Lane Kiffin? Obviously, Alabama, LSU, I think also is ranked a little bit too high, but elimination game is correct in that regard. I think BYU and Utah is going to be a sneaky game. Look, a lot of people are high up on BYU, but the Big 12 has their teams ranked where they are for a number of reasons. And that is because every time they've been in the CFP, they've done nothing. Now, the rest of the schedule is KU, Arizona State, and Houston. Houston just beat Kansas State, but I think even with one loss, they'd probably still get in. But it is what it is. Regardless, I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. I'm wherever you listen to the podcast. Tell your device to play Drew Duncan. You can Google me, Drew Duncan. I'm going to pretty much pop right the hell up. YouTube is Drew Duncan. Everybody have a great weekend. Stay safe, man. It's cold and rainy where I'm at. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. Have a great weekend, everybody.